It's not just the music, business, or sports worlds talking about Taylor Swift. She's making global political headlines.
New signs today of the power of Taylor Swift. More than 400,000 people visited vote.gov in just 24 hours after she directed them to the site and endorsed Harris.
It's a shift from what Lesley Stahl heard from a 21-year-old Taylor Swift during her 60 Minutes interview.
I don't get melodies and ideas in my head that have to do with, the issues of our, economic climate.
The budget deficit.
There you go.
Taylor Swift has been the center of so much attention, and that made our podcast team want to open up the 60 Minutes archives and take a second look to see what was never broadcast and what might be even more interesting today with the passage of time. That's the whole premise of this podcast in the first place.
I'm really surprised every time I see a crowd like that, because I never thought I'd get to play to a crowd like that.
So when you go, it's real?
Does it look like that? Great.
And when we went back into the vault, we discovered that Taylor Swift has always known her superpower.
Honestly, if you have to pick one priority, that's the fans.
You're a Swiftie.
I am a Swiftie.
First and foremost, or are you other things before you're a Swiftie?
I mean, I'm a playwright, but I'm a Swiftie first.
Kat Sloan Garcia is one of those diehard fans. We met her guiding visitors through a museum retrospective of Swift's concert and video costumes and red carpet outfits.
This is a dress from the Speak Now era, and I know 60 Minutes did a whole story of her.
That 60 Minutes profile of Taylor Swift in 2011 came just after she released her third album, Speak Now.
After leaving you, we're going to go down the street to CBS and talk with Lesley Stahl, who did this piece on Taylor Swift. 60 Minutes spent a lot of time with Swift. They were in different meetings with her, watching her create, watching her run her business. What would you want to ask Lesley Stahl?
I'm just so curious what it would have been like to be there that early on.
Do you consider it perilous to move away from country?
The criticism that I'm not country enough is the least hurtful criticism of all of them.
In never-before-released excerpts from her interview, which you're about to hear, Swift, the savvy, seemingly always-in-control superstar, revealed some insecurity.
Sometimes I get really overwhelmed when I think about, 10 years from now I'll be 30. What's the sound then? What am I doing then? What are the choices I've made at that point? Oh my God, what does my life look like?
What would life look like in her 30s? And would she have known the potential influence she'd have even in a presidential election?
I think what her endorsement does is encourage apathetic young people to vote. And I think that will matter.
I'm Seth Doan, and this is 60 Minutes, A Second Look, the podcast that peers into the archives of nearly 60 years of this famed TV news broadcast. Today, when Lesley Stahl met Taylor Swift, we'll take you inside Taylor Swift's world through never-before-broadcast interviews with her team, her mother, and the pop star herself.
I watched the piece.
Wasn't it good?
Fabulous.
I know, I watched it again too.
The Taylor piece?
Yeah.
When do you think you saw it last?
When it aired. I don't go back and look at my old pieces as a rule.
That, of course, is veteran 60 Minutes correspondent Lesley Stahl, along with her longtime producer, Shari Finkelstein. They've been a team for more than 25 years. The three of us sat down in a radio studio at CBS News headquarters in New York City.
What did you think when you
saw the
piece?
I thought that Taylor Swift was lovable, which I hadn't remembered. How candid she was, how open, how unaffected, intelligent.
I definitely think about a million people when I'm getting dressed in the morning. And that's just part of my life now. And
you're a role model, and you know it.
I think it's my responsibility to know it and to be conscious of it.
It's hard to believe now, but early on, 60 Minutes wasn't so sold on Taylor Swift. In 2008, Swift's then publicist Paula Erickson called producer Shari Finkelstein, saying there was a young country artist 60 Minutes should consider profiling.
And she said her name is Taylor Swift, and you said, who?
And I said, Paula, you're familiar with 60 Minutes, right? I mean, we do artists when they've been, at the top of their game for 30 years. We do Barbra Streisand, we do Bob Dylan. We don't do like, hey, here's the hot new up and coming country artist who's a teenager.
But the publicist insisted, just meet her. So they agreed to have lunch.
It was like really not convenient. I brought my associate producer and I think she was like, why are we taking time out from what we're in the middle of to go do this?
To have lunch with Taylor Swift.
To have lunch with Taylor Swift. I mean, it's so absurd to think about now.
Do you remember anything about Taylor's presence coming in? What stood out to you?
I just remember being struck by her poise, how articulate she was, how thoughtful she was. I think she talked about the ways in which she connected with her fans.
Finkelstein set off to sell the story, first to Lesley Stahl and then to 60 Minutes executives.
I'm just looking I have the blue sheet.
At 60 Minutes, a pitch is called a blue sheet.
It's really long, but I can read the beginning if you want.
Yeah, just give us a little hint of how you pitched the story.
Okay. Who was that face between Bono and Bruce Springsteen on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine's Best of Rock issue this year? If you didn't recognize her, chances are you're older than 21. The face belongs to then 17, now 18-year-old Taylor Swift, a singer-songwriter who went from complete obscurity a year and a half ago to country music stardom. In the world of country music, the fastest-growing music genre, big stars aren't typically young or female. They don't write their own music, and they certainly don't end up on the cover of Rolling Stone. But there's just something about Taylor Swift.
And there was, from your perspective.
There was.
I'd hardly heard of Taylor Swift. I maybe hadn't heard of her at all.
Shari says that if you didn't like the pitch, she was going to pull out the stop that you have a daughter named Taylor.
No, not I was going to. I think I led with that. Her name is Taylor, Lesley.
That's what did it. No, actually, I was very attracted to the business story.
Record sales were in free fall at the time, but Taylor Swift defied those trends. Finkelstein convinced Stahl, but executives at 60 Minutes were not so sure.
When we went to our bosses, they were kind of like, well, is she going to be a kind of one or two hit wonder? Let's just wait till her next album comes out.
Let's see if Taylor Swift is really as successful as you say she will be.
That was spring 2008. Soon Swift had proved to be much more than a one or two hit wonder. In the first 5 years of her career, she sold more albums than any other artist in any genre. At 20, she won her first Album of the Year at the Grammys for Fearless. And so in 2011, just after Swift released her third album that went multi-platinum, 60 Minutes decided to do the profile.
5 years ago, this fall, a 16-year-old girl released her debut country music album and dreamed of making it big. Well, today, that girl at 21 is as big as it gets.
There were quite a few things that were, I don't know if you say prescient, but the rest of the world would realize later that come up in your piece all of those years ago. You really see a grit, a determination.
Oh, yeah.
A self-confidence.
Absolutely.
Take a look at the crowd at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, where Taylor Swift sold out 4 shows within minutes.
Well, good evening, Los Angeles!
The decibel level here reminds you of the Beatles. It's almost as if she's their spiritual leader.
A story about Taylor Swift today would likely not start in the way it did on 60 Minutes in 2011.
Are they great songs, in your opinion? We spoke to Bill Werde, editorial director of Billboard.
Maybe if she looked different, like let's say she wasn't young and cute, I think people would be talking about her as a great songwriter.
So you think that the persona and the fan base and all that almost diminishes?
Yeah, I definitely think it does. I think that it's hard for critics to look at an arena full of screaming 12-year-old girls and say, this is really credible songwriting.
But you say it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt.
You start the piece building up her bona fides.
We felt we had to.
Why?
Because we felt we had to give her art some backbone and basically argue why we were doing the piece.
Yeah, and I think also in giving her the chops, he also summed up what people could see as the knock against her.
Finkelstein and Stahl spent long days with Swift in both Nashville and Los Angeles.
I mean, we had cameras with her running underneath the stage in the middle of the shows, changing her costume and flying up and doing all sorts of stuff. And in, stressful situations.
The show is an extravaganza with aerialists and fireworks on stage and frantic darting about below as Taylor runs in and out of quick change rooms and braces herself inside this glass contraption, preparing to be tossed in the air.
She gets into a little box and she's propelled onto the stage, and she talks about worrying about hurting her legs doing that.
I'm like, dear God, I'm very clumsy. I'm not a gymnast. I'm not graceful. Please don't let me break my leg. That's what's going on.
There's one part in the piece where first you see Taylor and she's on stage and she's kind of mouthing, "Oh my God," at the rapturous applause. And then you kind of push back a bit.
Are you really surprised, or are you just kind of putting it on?
I'm really surprised every time I see a crowd like that, because I never thought I'd get to play to a crowd like that.
So when you go, it's real?
Does it look like that? Great.
Did you believe her response?
Partly. I appreciated her saying that every time she goes out, she is amazed at the crowd. But she does that several times in her show. So she's already been amazed at the crowd. But I also understand her own wonder that they love her so much. I got that part.
According to Swift's mother, Andrea, whom Lesley Stahl also spoke with, this adoration was not something Taylor Swift was necessarily familiar with. She remembers her daughter being ostracized by her peers.
What's interesting is that in her songs, she's portraying herself as an outsider. And you look at her, she's so beautiful. You think she was never an outsider. What is this? But you're kind of telling us that she was.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think being an outsider or not being an outsider has much to do with beauty or not having a certain type of beauty. I think it has everything to do with being different. And regardless of how that difference occurs, you're in a setting where everyone wants to be the same, and you want to do something different, and all of a sudden, yeah, you're the outsider. Doesn't matter what else is going on.
I wonder how much of that, when she was young, being not in the A clique or whatever they called it, how much of that has been central to her songwriting? You feel a lot of that in her songs.
Oh, absolutely, and it's pivotal. You still see that in her music today.
Yeah.
That there's that sort of underlying, a little bit of insecurity. It will never go away.
It's interesting that in your songs you're still the outsider, with all the success.
Yeah, my mom talks to me a lot about that, because I think you kind of get set in how you feel when you're in school. Like, I could be sitting in the front row at an award show and I still don't feel like a cool kid.
The 60 Minutes team went into the story wondering how Swift was defying the trends of an ailing music industry. What they found was a young singer not only involved, but mostly in control of her own marketing and management decisions.
And who's at the helm? Look who we found running the management meeting.
It's like they messed with the color.
Unlike other stars of her caliber who sign up with management companies, Taylor created her own. As CEO, she manages herself.
It's fine just because it's subtle.
She's so natural. And at least at that point in her life, wide open. She knows who she is and has known that since she was 10 years old. And she doesn't compromise.
And that was something you wanted to get across in the story.
Definitely. It was interesting to me in watching it again that at 14 years old, she was going to leave a record deal because they wanted her to sing other people's music and she wanted to sing her own.
I would go and turn in songs, and more and more I would just get suggestions that I sing other people's songs. And, I just didn't want to.
And then, even some of her own songs, like her song Love Story, even people around her didn't like that song, which we talked about in the story. And she was like, it's fun when you prove people wrong.
I had to fight for that song because when I first played it for, my family and a few people, they were just sort of like,
But you believed in it. You trust yourself.
Yeah, it's almost more fun that way when you have something to prove.
Then our piece ended with her saying, Lesley, you asked her, what's it like to achieve this level of success and have all your dreams come true so young? And she had, I think, a really interesting answer.
It's great.
The answer is it's great.
It's not bad. And it just means I have a lot of time to figure out how I'm going to prove myself over and over and over again, and I have time to do it.
And, to look at that now, 13 years later, and she's, switched genres and she's been attacked by people. She's gone through some pretty dark periods and she's come back and, she keeps doing it.
Coming up on 60 Minutes, A Second Look, we'll share parts of the Taylor Swift interview that have never been heard before. And we'll explore what the Taylor of 2011 tells us about the Taylor of today.
I absolutely torture myself when making a record. And then I'll scour every single line of my songs and I'll go, is there a weak word in this line? Is there a weak phrase? Is there anything weak about this?
You meet a lot of people, a lot of famous people, important people, presidents, prime ministers, stars. Is there something that stands out or stands apart from your time with Taylor Swift?
Well, the first thing I remember when I think back is that she played the guitar for us.
It just, this isn't a happy song, and from the first note.
This is Taylor Swift at home in Nashville with Lesley Stahl. Swift had just reached for her guitar and started to play. And this conversation, like every other recording of Swift and her team that you'll hear from here on out, has never been broadcast before.
Is it the actual notes or is it how you're playing it? I'm trying to think if that same sequence would, in an upbeat way, would sound joyous.
It's just the way that it makes you feel when you hear it.
Yeah. I think it's partly the way you're playing it. I'm actually feeling your emotion. It's organic. It is. You're playing it with sadness, as opposed to the actual. You think? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You could make that happy.
If you really wanted to, Yeah, but it's
It's all wrong. It's all wrong.
You can't.
And you push her on, can't you make it sound happy? And she does.
And she doesn't like it.
She doesn't like it.
It's not the way I wrote it. And she is determined.
Yeah, it's because it's not exactly about the intricate lyric or the chord combinations. I could talk to you all day about that, but at the end of the day, all that we really remember about a person or a song is how it made us feel.
In 2011, Swift gave Stahl and the 60 Minutes team an unusual amount of access, including several hours of interviews, only 12 minutes of which was broadcast on television.
For me, the reason I chose country music in the first place is because it seemed like where you could tell stories.
No matter what the music is.
Well, I feel like people in pop music and people in rock music, they get to take all these chances production-wise, and they get to really push the envelope musically. And to short country music of that, I think that's unfair to country artists. I mean, I think that we should be able to take risks too.
But do you consider it perilous to move away from country?
The criticism that I'm not country enough is the least hurtful criticism of all of them.
Swift did not explicitly say she was making a transition to pop, but 9 months after the 60 Minutes interview aired, she started releasing pop singles. And a few years later, Swift left country music entirely.
I think that what we see in Taylor Swift is that with every album, she has kind of reinvented herself.
This is Pooja Patel, who was editor-in-chief of two influential music publications, Pitchfork and Spin. Taylor Swift has now been famous for Patel's entire career as a music journalist. Longer, actually.
So longtime music writer, critic, this is your world. When did Taylor Swift enter your thinking, your world?
So I'm a little bit older than Taylor Swift, which means that, like a lot of women, I grew up with her. We have seen her do country and then shift a little into pop and then shift into like big time radio pop and then shift into indie. She has shown herself growing and evolving as a person and displaying different types of being a woman while maintaining extremely common themes of being vulnerable, of not fitting in, of being in love with someone who doesn't love you back, of being in love and being thrilled that you're no longer in love with that person, of being spiteful, of wanting revenge, you know, and doing all of that with a kind of, I mean, wide-eyed and earnest expression for someone who is a billionaire and one of the most famous people in the world.
As Swift's star rose, so too did the lore around this singer-songwriter. Even more than they had in 2011, fans were picking apart her lyrics, her liner notes, even her outfits, all in search of clues about Swift's life.
If you talk to any Swiftie, you know, the second that there is an album announced, there's a million conspiracy theories about what the font says about Taylor Swift, what the color scheme says. She leaves clues for her fans about, you know, different themes on the album.
Yeah, but you write these notes in the album coverage with all these clues. You want us to know. You just
kind
don't
of
want
fun.
it to come out of your mouth.
Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. But it's telling as much as you can tell without telling it all, which I think is my comfort level of what to tell.
Over the years, the clues or Easter eggs Swift leaves for her fans have become more elaborate. The Swift-obsessed have found codes in her jewelry, in the color of elevator buttons in a music video, and in shots of videos that seem to mirror previous ones. It all happens to be a powerful marketing strategy.
I keep hearing that you're a really smart businesswoman.
Wow. Who's
Are
saying
you?
that? I really do love the business end of it. I think that, you know, being involved in every single aspect of what you do helps you not feel powerless. It helps me feel like I'm not being controlled by like this empire of strangers.
Much of Swift's marketing happens online, and early on, Swift understood that it could be a powerful tool to draw in new audiences, and she wanted to make sure country music record executives understood that too.
I would go in and talk to them and I'd say, I have a bunch of MySpace friends. Thousands of them.
Remember MySpace?
And, you know, they've all got my music on their pages and then they send my music to their friends and it's this viral thing. It's called social networking.
Business is in their blood is how Taylor Swift's mother, Andrea, described it to Stahl. She had worked as a mutual fund wholesaler and Taylor's dad was a stockbroker.
She came from a family that was really invested in her success in the world of entertainment.
Here's Pooja Patel again.
And what comes with that is a lot of business savvy and a lot of very considered thought about how to create a story around her. What is like the American dream version of the music industry? Like that is the way that Taylor has been presented. I think that she is an extremely smart businesswoman, and the team around her is exceptionally good at marketing.
Swift's parents got involved in almost every aspect of their daughter's career, right down to coaching Taylor's performances. Andrea Swift told Lesley Stahl that she grew up watching her own mother perform. She'd been an opera singer.
She would say, "So Andrea, what did you think? Did you feel that? Did it make you want to cry?" And I would literally, she would want an honest critique of how the rehearsal went. And so I think that part of me is something that little did I know, I was really training for the future.
And obviously Taylor does the same thing. You sit and does she then say?
Absolutely. You know, I can be her biggest fan and her worst critic because I know she needs that from me.
Does she take it from you? You're her mother.
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
She wants it.
The family business instincts extend to strategy and investments, too. Take the fleet of tour buses the Swifts purchased.
Do you own all those buses? Yourself?
Yes.
You own the buses?
Yep.
Now, I know other stars rent them or lease them, but you own the buses.
Well, you can rent them and lease them out to other artists when you're not using them.
So that was a pretty smart decision.
Yeah, that's my dad for you.
That's your dad?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a family.
He's a smart dude.
And in Nashville, the Swifts decided to add another member to the musical family, one who would be key to Taylor's stratospheric rise, and later, one of her darkest periods.
I remember my first meeting with Scott. He wouldn't let me stop playing songs.
That's Swift telling Lesley Stahl about Scott Borchetta, a record label executive Swift met in 2004.
And he kept wanting to hear one more, play another one, play another one. And I played probably 20 songs for him. And I just remember thinking, this has got to be the guy. This has got to be the guy. He's going to let me write my own stuff. This is it.
But there was just one problem. As Borchetta told Stahl, he needed another year as he set up his own record company.
For her to go through the other meetings that she had with other record companies and then call me back and say, I've made up my mind, I'm waiting for you. She was willing to wait practically a year to get started.
You know, that is extraordinary. She felt she was the racehorse in the gate at that point.
Yeah.
She really believed it. You two are really connected. It's like
Amen.
a marriage.
Well, I think it's like family, for sure.
I had to wait, and I had to be patient. And it's tough for me to be patient because I really like to actualize dreams and make them happen as soon as they come into my head. I really like for things to be seen through.
In the 60 Minutes interview, you can really hear how much trust Swift had placed in Scott Borchetta, and you can imagine how big a deal it was when that family broke up. In 2018, Swift left Borchetta's record label, Big Machine Records. Soon after, Borchetta sold the label to a music industry executive named Scooter Braun. And with that purchase, Braun got all of the master rights to the original recordings of Taylor Swift's first 6 albums.
Taylor Swift, I would say had a public freakout.
In part because she said she'd tried and failed to buy the masters herself, but also because Scooter Braun was a close associate of Kanye West's, who Swift had been feuding with ever since he hijacked her acceptance speech at the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards.
The issue was really that Scooter Braun was a figure who, in Taylor's mind, represented people who had not been kind to her.
Swift fought back by enlisting, who else? Her fans. She has re-recorded and re-released 4 of her original 6 albums and encouraged her fans to buy and stream only what she has branded the Taylor's versions. And it worked. The re-release of her 2014 album 1989 sold more copies in its first week than the original, a massive hit itself.
I think that she is a tour de force of an artist who has shown that she can change both the music industry and the shift of culture in real time at a whim, and really, really has proven that you can do whatever you want as long as you do it with intention and an extremely thoughtful, fan-facing marketing campaign.
The success of her re-recorded albums was driven by the loyalty Swift has been developing with her fans since day one.
Honestly, if you have to pick one priority, that's the fans. They're the ones who will keep you getting to do what you love. And I feel like they get me, they understand me, they've got my back. And feeling like you've got those people out there in the world is a wonderful feeling.
I think it is a extremely savvy way to be moving because it does have financial repercussions or possibilities for her in the future. And at the same time, she has made a gigantic statement to her fans, which is that the ownership of my music is the thing that means more to me than anything else.
Swift was not the first to reclaim ownership of her music or re-record old albums, but she is the most successful. Now, other mostly younger artists are making similar demands to own their own music, and labels are starting to add restrictions on how long an artist must wait before re-recording their material. In the 2020s, it was changing record label contracts. In the 2010s, it was topping pop charts as a country act. Over her career, we've seen Swift continue to upend expectations. In the 60 Minutes interview, Lesley Stahl tried to get at what drives her.
Deep wells of insecurities. There's a lot.
You think that propels you? You
Absolutely.
think it's part of the drive?
I don't know if any of this would have happened if I ever felt completely settled and just satisfied. You can let the success cripple you, and you can let the fear just overtake you, or you can let it fuel you and realize that, yes, you have to rise to the occasion, and yes, you have to beat what you did last time.
Coming up on 60 Minutes, A Second Look, what Taylor Swift told Lesley Stahl about the push to prove herself, control her art, and keep connecting with her fans.
They're giving you power. They are. I watched it. They were just saying we'd follow you anywhere.
I mean,
does that go into your head and do things to you up there?
No, it just kind of feels like unconditional love, which is amazing. And what I've come to learn in this life is that you can never abuse unconditional love.
If you've listened to the radio in the last 15 years, you know those songs. They're inescapable.
Can you hum them for me? No.
I'm not a singer. Even though, You Belong With Me was my one when I was 7 that I was, obsessed with.
How does that go?
I remember you driving to my house in the middle of the night. I'm the one who makes you laugh when you know you're about to cry.
You know all the lyrics.
When that Swiftie, Kat Sloan Garcia, gave me the tour of the Museum of Arts and Design's Taylor Swift exhibit in New York City, I was struck by her obsession with the pop singer.
We're looking at these outfits here, and I'm realizing listeners can't see you, and I feel like we need to have you describe yourself. You have bright red lipstick. Is that on purpose?
The red lipstick is her fault, because she started wearing red lipstick, and I was very impressionable at that age.
12 years ago. So the red lipstick has stayed from that era of Taylor Swift. What is it about Taylor Swift that resonates to this degree?
I keep saying it's the songwriting, but it's the songwriting. There's this.
There are lots of good songwriters out there.
You're right.
There are lots
You are
of
so
talented
right.
people who can put things to music.
I think there's this whole generation that grew up with Taylor Swift, and it's people my age, early 20s, but it's also a millennial audience who, now are in their 30s and 40s. These generations who have, throughout their lives, had it parallel Taylor Swift. They're experiencing heartbreak when she's a teenager experiencing heartbreak, and they're finding their careers when she's at the height of her career, and they're falling in love when she's falling in love. And because she releases records so regularly, we've kind of gotten to experience your whole life with her as the soundtrack to it.
It's, the songs come from a very real place, and if it's a song of, kind of humorous revenge or just ridiculously gut-wrenching heartbreak, that's all real.
Taylor Swift built her career on the idea that her own emotional reactions would resonate. She explained the concept to Lesley Stahl by using her 2010 song, Dear John, as an example.
What's the best line you ever wrote?
It's probably a line in the bridge of Dear John, and it says, but I took your matches before fire could catch me, so don't look now. I'm shining like fireworks over your sad, empty town.
Ooh.
And when I sing it live, these fireworks go off like, over your sad, empty town, like boom. And I think I saw that in my head when I wrote it.
The song narrates the emotional fallout of a manipulative relationship with a much older man.
That's a song that just really took a lot to write because it was saying a lot of things that were exactly what I was going through, but I had to really take a deep breath before I decided to finally put it on the record, because it was a song that I knew was going to go out and help people, and girls who had been in that kind of a relationship, they'd feel like, oh, maybe I'm not crazy. I wasn't alone in feeling that way.
Dear John was a massive hit, but her candor also fueled a level of tabloid gossip. The song is rumored to be about the musician John Mayer, whom Swift briefly dated.
What happens when there's a song about someone and you don't actually say, but did they call you? Say, you wrote a song about me. What?
It depends on the content of that song.
Yeah.
Because, there are some songs that are kind of confessions of love or apology, and those songs are ones that do a lot of good to the person they're written about. And then there's the other side.
But they hurt you.
There's the other side of it, where the songs are kind of brutally honest and just kind of probably harder to listen to for the person it's written about.
Do you ever worry they'll write a song about you?
Oh yeah, that's crossed my mind. That's probably going to happen, and I'm just kind of bracing myself for the inevitable there.
Yeah. And then would you call them?
Well, I wouldn't really be writing those kinds of songs about them if I was still speaking to them. So.
Good point. Good point.
Since the 60 Minutes interview, songwriters who've been linked with Taylor Swift have, in fact, released songs that are rumored to be about her.
If you started dating somebody and, you just want to have your privacy, don't you, at least in the beginning? No? You're looking at me like, what's she talking about?
Well, no, I'm just kind of trying to think of like all the situations I've been in. And, a relationship is the combination of two people and their comfort levels. It's so heartbreaking when you have so many things line up and so many things click, but your comfort level with fame is so different than theirs. Because I don't care. Like, I'll walk into a coffee shop with someone I'm in love with because I don't care because I'm in love with them, and it doesn't matter to me who's looking, but it does to some people.
So maybe you couldn't really have a good relationship with someone who cares that much. This is too far apart from where you are.
It seems a little unnecessary to care that much about keeping people out.
The public interest in Swift's romantic life and fans' obsession with linking tabloid stories to details in her songs has fed Swift's popularity. But Swift told Stahl that her fans' dedication, which Stahl witnessed up close at several concerts, should not be taken for granted.
They're giving you power. They are. I watched it. They were just saying we'd follow you anywhere.
I mean,
does that go into your head and do things to you up there?
No, it just kind of feels like unconditional love, which is amazing. And what I've come to learn in this life is that you can never abuse unconditional love when you're lucky enough to have it. And you can't ever mistake someone's kindness for weakness, and you can't ever assume that because they love me right now, if I do something to betray their trust, they're still going to be there, because I know it's rare. And I know that it's here in this moment because of the choices I've made and the music I've written.
In 2011, Lesley Stahl anticipated one criticism that would hound Swift for the next decade plus, that she was hesitant to share her political views.
As far as politics and who I want to be making decisions for our country and all that, I don't really sing about that, because I don't get melodies and ideas in my head that have to do with, the issues of our, economic climate.
The budget deficit.
There you go.
We're not going to get a song.
I don't have any ideas that come to my head that have anything to do with that.
The military budget's not going to be in one of your songs.
No, probably not. It doesn't fit into a chorus.
So that was 2011. So she would have been what? How old? 21, 22, 23?
21.
Yeah, I'm with her. She was 21. She doesn't have to be singing about politics. This is the life of someone who was a child star. I say that loosely, a teenage star. All eyes on her in country music radio. And you live, you learn, you grow. And I think that she's done some of that.
In 2018, Swift was becoming more vocal about her political positions. She publicly supported 2 Democratic candidates in Tennessee, one for the House and one for the Senate. In 2019, she openly supported the Equality Act, legislation meant to prevent discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. In 2020, she took to social media to announce that she would vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the presidential election. She also released Only the Young, a protest song about her disappointment over the losses of progressive candidates in the 2018 midterms, an exhortation to not lose hope. And as you know, after months of frenetic media and fan speculation, and just about 8 weeks before the election, she shared on social media that she would cast her vote in November for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
I think after that Instagram post went live, I saw that within 24 to 48 hours, apparently 300,000 plus people had used the link that she referenced to in her Instagram post to register to vote.
What are the now repeated endorsements by Swift say about her political evolution?
It's interesting because she's not explicit about her politics. I think that we know where she stands with women's rights, and I think that we know where she stands with protecting queer people and progressive values around LGBTQIA. But I don't know that we know much more about her than that. Even when it comes to like very, very pivotal elections like the one that we're about to enter, her endorsements come very, very close to the election itself. And they're almost always tied up in other things that are going on within the world of Taylor Swift.
She's such a sensation. Is there a risk in her taking sides at this point? She is a businesswoman. She must weigh the risk.
I think that she has been pretty consistent through the last 8 years or so about these exact policies and topics, that I don't know that there is a risk to her there. I think if she was to take a stance on immigration or guns or, other conservative leaning policies and positions, there might be a risk at it, but those are not things that she really addresses. I think she is far too powerful and far too famous to have a real risk to her career. And I also got to say, like, the average 34-year-old has very complicated and nuanced ideas about politics. And so this is an evolution. I'm wondering if there will be some more evolution to come, or if it will kind of stay within this lane.
The themes covered in the 60 Minutes interview in 2011, those controversies, the way she redefined herself, her approach to music and business, would, as the years pass, not only become more clear, but for this billionaire musician, also exponentially bigger. Knowing what you know now about how successful she would be, Taylor Swift would be, did you see this coming when you met her?
You couldn't see this coming in a million years. You couldn't. Did you?
I'm not surprised in a way. Of course, you're always surprised to see somebody have this level of success for so long. But when you look back at it, all the ingredients were there in a way, right?
Sometimes I get really overwhelmed when I think about, 10 years from now, I'll be 30. What's the sound then? What am I doing then? What are the choices I've made at that point? Oh my God, what does my life look like? And then I get a little overwhelmed when I think about 10 years, 20 years, building a life, a lifetime career isn't my job right now sitting here at 21.
What is the future for Taylor Swift? She just keeps releasing record after record? What happens?
I've been thinking about this because we have seen her do country and then shift a little into pop and then shift into big time radio pop and then shift into indie. I would love to see her start a label. I don't think her star is rising. Her star has risen. What I hope is to see her start fostering a next generation of musicians.
The big question is, would you like to interview Taylor Swift again?
I would.
Are you trying?
Are we trying?
Not actively.
We both think that she will not do it.
Really? Why?
Because she doesn't have to.
Yeah, she certainly doesn't need help selling her music.
This episode of 60 Minutes, A Second Look was co-produced by Julie Holstein and Maura Waltz. Additional producing from Hazel Mae Bryant. Jamie Benson is our senior producer and engineer. Our fact checker is Annie Cronenberg. Recording assistance from Alan Pang and Marlon Polycarp. Bill Owens is the executive producer of 60 Minutes, and Matthew Polivoit is the senior producer. Invaluable support from Megan Marcus and Steve Razies of Paramount Audio. Shari Finkelstein produced the original 2011 broadcast story for 60 Minutes entitled Taylor Swift. Thanks also to the crew and editor of the original piece. And special thanks to the team at the Museum of Art and Design in New York City. I'm Seth Doan. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.